All right, y'all. So we're going to go ahead and get started with some quick announcements, welcoming our hosts. So we've got Leslie Apple, Charlie Fry, and Micah Brandenburg with us today. They're going to teach you about exit planning. If you're unfamiliar, these are our monthly ACE classes. They're put on by the Builders Association and sponsored by 84 Lumber, so you can tell them thank you for all the education. Recently, yesterday, we had our PWB meetings. Those are our Professional Women in Building Council. So if you're not familiar with those, check your emails. You'll see more information coming out about that. Our first Parade of Homes info session is on Thursday at 9 a.m. at Lotzar. Parade of Homes is also going to be opening up for submissions that day. So if you don't know what the Parade of Homes is, need a little bit more information about sponsorships, ads, participating, you can get all that at that info session, and we will have another. On Friday, we've got our Disaster Release Task Force meeting, and that's going to be at Auction House in like Fletcher area at 10 a.m. And then the most fun is our casino night is next week on June 5th. You can get tickets for that online on our website.
Yeah, that's right. You have to dress up for that?
The theme is Ash Vegas, so whatever Ash Vegas means in your heart.
Okay, Ash Vegas.
And then our scholarships are also open on our website. The deadline to apply is June 10th. So if you know anyone trying to get into the trades in any kind of regard going to college, we do have scholarships available to get folks into the trades.
Okay.
I believe that's all I've got for you this morning. We'll let Leslie and everyone take it away.
Okay, great.
Thanks for being here, y'all.
Yeah. Can I share my screen on here?
Yeah, I think it's the
Get
three
the
dots
present.
at the bottom.
I see one called Present Now. It's a square with a upward arrow, Leslie.
Yeah, that's
All
the
right.
one you use, Leslie.
Oh,
Can you see this? Okay. So you can see that and you can hear me at the same time?
yep.
Yes.
Great. Well, good morning. It is great to be here with you all. My name is Leslie Apple, and I have worked for Edward Jones as a financial advisor for 8 years in Asheville, and I have lived in this community for 19 years. I'm joined in this presentation by Charlie Fry of Manulife Hancock and Micah Brandenburg of Legendary Exits, and we will each present for about 15 minutes on complementary aspects of exit planning, aiming to leave about 10 minutes for questions at the end. I wanted to share with you that I became a financial advisor because I have a passion for helping people. I did that first as a middle school and high school teacher. I then was an outward bound instructor in the wilderness. And I also was a small business owner myself before becoming a financial advisor. So I know some aspects, some struggles of being a business owner firsthand. And I'm passionate about helping business owners thrive, but I've also seen how financial advisors, myself included, have often failed to understand the needs of business owners, which is why I sought out and earned a designation called a certified exit planning advisor. And much of what we're going to share today has to do with that. So I think a great place for us to start, if I can forward my slides here.
Leslie, I had to go back to the document and it was there.
Sorry, what, Charlie?
I had to go back to the document and click on that
Okay.
and just go from there rather than.
Okay, I got it. So where we're going to start is, what is exit planning, and answer that question. So exit planning is a proactive process undertaken by business owners to consider transferring ownership to another business or individual. This process helps identify and address personal, financial, and business needs. A solid succession strategy helps an owner confidently exit a privately held company on their terms. The advantage of a comprehensive and effective strategy is that you will be able to articulate your goals for the transaction and life after the sale. We will be able to identify your personal financial needs, identify and prepare a successor, highlight ways to increase the value and marketability of the business, address the tax and legal considerations for a transfer of ownership or the sale of a business, and provide contingency plans should the owner be forced to step away. So while you may not know exactly what your succession plan looks like today, or even if you do, it's important to start thinking about what's next sooner rather than later. And here's why. For most business owners, 80 to 90% of their net worth is in their business, not in a 401k or the bank. It's in that business. 80% of businesses put on market do not sell. And 50% of exits are involuntary due to unforeseen circumstances. So while ideally you will successfully exit your business on your timeline, extracting the full value put into it, you need to be prepared for the possibility that you might not be able to control your timeline, you might not get the full value out of that sale, or your business might not sell at all. But businesses that proactively prepare for the unexpected become stronger, more profitable businesses today and can have much higher values at the time of sale. So proper exit planning can inform your business strategy by providing context for decision making and can help improve the value and marketability of your company. Your exit plan may have implications for who you hire and how you invest in the business and how you finance those operations. Even if it's early in your business or it seems too soon, the decisions that you are making today could impact your ability to exit the business on your terms. Proactive exit planning can help prepare your business for unexpected events. We call these the 5 Ds: death, disability, disaster, divorce, and disagreement. And in the event of an unsolicited offer, you would be prepared knowing what you need and want from a potential transaction. So what are the 5 key steps to help you get started with the knowledge and resources at the ready now? So the first thing is we're going to suggest that you build your professional team with a financial advisor at a coordination role. Many business owners benefit by coordinating their needs among a core group of professionals. When everybody is around the same table with a common vision, the business owner isn't getting conflicting and confusing advice, which business owners tell us is very common if everybody's not coordinated. At the center of your professional team is your financial advisor, because they will be there through the entire process during the planning, the execution, and the post-sale phases. And they can help you articulate and quantify your goals for the exit, to communicate those goals across the entire professional team, and address a wide breadth of financial needs throughout the process. In addition, the financial advisor, you will also likely benefit from having a well-rounded team of professionals to assist you, such as a tax professional, a legal professional, a commercial banker, and a business valuation professional, and even a business value accelerator professional. And that's something that Micah Brandenburg does. So in step 2, we're going to encourage you to determine your individual wealth gap. One of the most important parts of an exit plan is determining how much you need from the sale of your business to fund your desired lifestyle and your legacy goals after you're no longer the owner of that business. And keep in mind that exiting the business does not necessarily mean retirement. You may decide to sell only a portion of your business. You may decide to sell the business but stay on to help manage and consult. You may use the sales from that business to start a new venture and get on the ride all over again. So to that end, you should envision how you want to spend time after you exit the business, very specifically, which can also help you determine whether you're personally ready to step away. Being a business owner is an identity, and a lot of times people aren't prepared to lose that identity. So your financial advisor can be instrumental in helping you think through what life might look like post-exit and help determine the desired outcome of the transaction, both in terms of dollars, but also how you will spend your time and the impact you want to create in life that you once were able to do through that business. And they will help you see where you can make adjustments if needed. So step 3 is to understand what your business is worth now. Just like you need to get your home inspected to see what the value is, you also need to get a clear idea of the value of your business. A calculation of value will help provide a range of reasonable values and set your expectations on facts. It is completed by a valuation expert, not by you. You are too close to see if your baby might be ugly. And it can be used to understand any gap between what you need financially from the transaction and what the business is currently worth, and highlight opportunities to enhance the value of that business. So because it can take time to enhance the value of a business, we recommend getting a value now after any material changes have happened in that business, and at least 3 to 5 years before you are planning to exit that business. In the 4th step, you need to develop a strategy to close the gap between what you need the business to sell for and what it is currently worth. Now, Charlie and Micah are going to talk more about the strategies that can be used to grow the value of that business. So I'm going to skip ahead here to step 5, which is to be informed about the exit options that could meet your goals. So succession planning is part of an effective exit plan. And it's a process of choosing who will take over the ownership of the business, the management of the business, and the leadership of your company once you step away. These responsibilities don't have to be with the same person, but they can. So there are generally 3 main categories of succession plans, also referred to as exit options. It's internal, external, and liquidation. So with internal transfers, the owner sells or transfers to someone affiliated within the company, such as a family member, a business partner, or employees. Typically, this will create lower sales proceeds, but you will incur lower transaction costs because the buyers are familiar with the business. This option usually comes with greater control over the timing of your exit and greater continuity for the employees, the clients, suppliers, your community. On the other hand, with an external transfer, the owner sells or transfers to an unrelated third party. This option tends to generate higher sales proceeds, but requires longer and potentially more costly due diligence periods or processes. The owners may have less control over the timing of their exit, and it usually creates greater potential for changes to business operations and culture. So basically, in the home realm, it's kind of like selling to a friend or putting it on the market and selling it on, like, through a real estate agent. The third option on this slide we see is liquidation, which is basically unwinding the business by selling off assets to the highest bidder. This option nets significantly lower sales proceeds, but you can raise cash quickly, and it will be the most disruptive for employees, clients, suppliers, because you're dissolving the business. It will not exist anymore as that entity. And it is worthwhile to understand each of these options long before you may exit, because there are important action steps that you can take now to position yourself and the successor for prosperity before, during, and after you exit. So again, those 5 steps that I covered are: develop a team, know how much money you would need out of the business should it sell, know how much the business is worth in this moment, then have a process to close the gap and increase the value of the business to what you need it to be, and know what your end game is, ideally, if you were to have to exit at any point in time. Kind of like being on an airplane. You need to know where the exits are at all points. We want that plane to get you to your final destination, but there's a possibility that it's just not able to. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Charlie now, who will share more about the process that a certified exit planning advisor can use to help a business owner improve the likelihood of success in their exit. And by the way, Charlie, I'll give you like a 2-minute warning so that we're sure that Micah will have enough time when he presents.
Perfect. If you'll stop sharing, I will start sharing.
Yes, I will.
All right. Good morning, everyone. As Leslie said, my name is Charlie Fry, and I work for a company by the name of John Hancock. And all of my work is to support Leslie. That's what I'm here for, and that's what I do. I am trying to find my page here that I'm going to share. Here we go. All right. Are you seeing it okay? Okay, good deal. Let me just click on that so that I can scroll through it as we're talking through. You know, as Leslie was talking, one of the things that hits me is I think for all of us, how we got into business and how we build a business might have been on purpose, might have been by accident, might have been as an answer to a need in our community, or something we realized, or a skill set that just got developed. However you got to where you are, at the end of the day, I think what you're looking for is to have a company of significance. Said differently, to have a significant company. And significant companies don't just happen. People get from A to B to C to D pretty much because they're doing it on purpose, not by accident. And I think it's something that you need to take on and take a look at. And so, you know, Leslie was talking about the process and understanding it, and I think that's important. What I want to encourage you to think about is every day you get up and you work in your business, you've got that focus going on where you're focused on, you know, whether it's managing employees or bringing in new customers or getting your finished product out the door, meeting demands and needs, and you're working on that every day, and it's an overwhelming thing for the most part. And all of a sudden this group comes along, and what we're advocating is that you work on your business, not just in your business. And if you're like most of us that have a small business that we're running, we're going, wait a second, where's that time going to come from? And that's why the team that Leslie described for you is so important. And that's why she sees the value in that, and how it can make a difference in the greater Asheville area. I think about that show on HGTV, Love It or List It. All right. And the whole premise of the show is they go out and show you houses you might want to buy, and then they fix up your existing home. So you get the dilemma and ultimately the drama at the end of the show. Do you buy the new one or do you keep the one that you've been living in? And that's what we want you to think about a little bit when it comes to the idea of your business. And that is, just because you're going down the road and building a significant company that could be ready to sell at any moment doesn't mean that you have to sell it. It just means that your company is poised to look good on all levels, internally, externally, from a potential banker's perspective, but also could be from a perspective of a potential buyer. And that's what this conversation ultimately is about. And so I'm going to scroll through just a couple things here that we look at. And so you should be seeing the 5 stages. I can't see you anymore. So Leslie, are you seeing that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So when you think about the 5 stages of maturity, and this is how we want to kind of help you realize where you are, and what that team that Leslie talked about will do is they're going to help you identify kind of where you're at. You know, it's one thing to have the GPS machine, but if you're in the middle of the ocean and don't know where to plug in current location, the machine's kind of worthless to you. And that's what we want to do, is help you build that process around that. Part of that will be understanding the gaps. Leslie talked about the 5 Ds that tend to sideline businesses. I don't know whether any of you saw a massive hurricane coming in November that would change the course of rivers in your neighborhoods. But you know, there's things that you can do along the way that will protect that. Once you kind of understand once you have those protection things in place, how do you build so that you're working towards that ultimate goal? And then faced with the choice, do I harvest it or do I continue it on? And Leslie alluded to that and talking about, you know, what that next step might be. What is life after your business? And then ultimately managing it as you go forward. And so those 5 stages are just very quick. You know, we want to identify where you are. We want to understand those risks that you're maybe not protected against, and step into those. And when you think about those risks, you've got things that are listed up top here on the right-hand side, but then you also have those financial risks and ultimately business risks that come through it as you work through the building and then harvesting and the managing phase. As you're going through that, we look at these intangible capitals of your business. And they're things that, as I said earlier, might have happened accidentally, or maybe they happened because, you know what, I needed a better process. But when you start thinking about the elements of your business that aren't necessarily on a balance sheet or an income statement, what are they? And how do you continue to build those? The first one we come to is human capital, right? Do you have the best people working in the best places in your business? Where do you have a need for greater human capital? Quite frankly, where's it broke? Who are those people that are hurting your brand that you might need to get rid of? And so you think about the things about recruiting and motivating and retaining and ultimately evolving into what that business might look like as you go forward with that. The second capital we talk about that's an intangible is social capital. And this is, you know, the company culture. What does it feel like? Why do people like working there? As you look at that, some companies are just the way they are because that's the way we became. Others are on purpose in developing that culture and what that might look like. And these are the kind of things that Leslie and Micah can help you with as you go forward. I think one that is kind of self-evident, but at the same time, maybe under value as you're going through it is your customer capital. When you think about your current customer base, as we were talking about the cement business and the foundation business, I would imagine there's a repeatability in users with general contractors. They keep calling you up every time they go to a new project. that would be that developing and maintaining and building on that customer capital. Recently had a friend of mine that sold a business, and the reason why they bought their business was because the acquirer did not want to put the time, effort, or energy into growing their customer base. But this guy had a stellar customer base. And so he was able to actually use that as a force multiplier on the multiple that somebody was willing to pay him for his company, because it was leverageable. It was a reason why somebody wanted to buy his business, but also the reason why they wanted to keep him and his staff in place, because they knew that was the glue that kept what they were actually buying in place. And then the last one is that structural capital. All right. This encompasses everything that makes your company efficient, right? The processes, the documentation, the training programs, maybe proprietary technology and software and tools or equipment that you've developed. Got another buddy of mine that recently sold a glove business. And the reason why he was acquired was because they had this factory that they could quickly change the kind of gloves that they were making. And the acquirer needed that kind of flexibility in their manufacturing element that they didn't have. And that was something that he could then leverage to make his business look a little bit better. So when you're looking at those 4 C's, all right, don't disregard them. I would continue to lean into them and what they might be. And so just as a reminder, that's human capital, social capital, your customer capital, and ultimately your structural capital. And I'm just going to keep pushing as we go through here. As exit planning advisors, and I too am a CEPA designated advisor as well. One of the things I find we spend a lot of time on are these gaps. All right, that wealth gap that Leslie talked about, the profit gap. I'm amazed as I've gone down this journey with many small business owners, how many business owners leverage business assets, business income for their own benefit. I'm thinking about one couple. They have not been on a vacation in 20 years that wasn't business related, right? So if all of a sudden they're going to retire and they still want to travel, all of a sudden there's not a company now to pay for that. And so you start thinking about where that is. And ultimately, as Leslie alluded to, that value gap is something you've got to pay attention to. Just a real quick story. I was working with I'll call it a small business. They were offered $40 million for their business. They thought it was worth 50. And so we went down this road of evaluating their value gap. And at the end of the day, I think the value gap existed for the acquirer in the fact that one of the partners was responsible for all sales. They were a medical device company. And I think they were discounting what might happen to the earnings, the EBITDA number, if you would, if that salesperson was no longer around. And so they had a company, they had a question they had to answer for themselves. Do we sell 10 million less than we think we're worth? Or do we address where the value gap might be for the acquirer? And that's what they did. And they're about 18 months into a 36-month plan. They went out and hired 3 of the best medical device salespeople that they knew of. And their goal is to grow their EBITDA number from 10 million to 12 million. All right. But the other thing they want to do is we recognize that when acquirers are coming in, they're paying a multiple for that earnings. In the original offer, they were being offered 4 times, where the owners thought they were worth 5. We want to go back to market, and this is part of our plan on this value gap management at 6 times earnings. And so if you're doing your math there, 6 times earnings times a multiple or times an EBITDA of 12 would be a $72 million price tag. And we feel like we've addressed all the potential risks that acquirer might perceive, and also this huge value gap in why we think it would be worth more when we go back to market in that 36-month period of time. And so sometimes when I talk about these stories, I think you can see and hear and maybe understand what and how that may work as you're willing to take that on. And so one of the things that Leslie alluded to earlier is some 80% of sellers a year after they sell their company are very dissatisfied that they got rid of their company. Maybe it's because their business went away. Maybe it was because it was part of their identity. For a lot of folks, it's because they don't plan that next step. And so we think it's very, very important as you're going through that you understand what the business aspects of that might be, what that financial or wealth gap might be, but spend some time on the personal side and what that might look like and what you want to do.
Hey, Charlie, you got 2 minutes, Brent.
Great, thank you. But I think there's some of the things that you've got to be on purpose about, and having the correct team in place, I think can really help you there. And so I'll finish up my time here by talking about these two concurrent paths to your exit, right? At the end of the day, working on your business, okay, as well as working on what that next stage in life looks like. If you've got 80% of your worth tied up in your business, how do you create that liquidity event that's going to set up that next level, that next layer, or that next chapter in life that you're looking to do there? And so sitting down with somebody like Leslie, I think, is absolutely important. Being able to lay out those goals and objectives, but more importantly, your hopes and dreams. For those of you that are married, I'd have your spouse involved in that conversation. I'd let them do a lot of the talking, because a lot of times our perception is not necessarily their reality. But these are the kind of things that I know Leslie is steeped in, and it's just a hallmark of how she runs her business. So with that, I will stop sharing.
All right. So now we're going to hear from Micah Brandenburg, who is also a certified exit planning advisor, but he focuses his work in helping business owners increase the value of the business, closing that gap. So I am going to give Micah, I'm going to give you 2 minutes also. Just so
2 minute warning. Sure.
All
2 minutes to present, Leslie. that's not a lot of time, but okay.
You got to talk
2 minute
fast,
warning.
right?
There we go. All right. So first off, let me kick it off and just say we're 30 minutes in. Let's stretch. We're about to dive into 3 questions that I think are going to give you a lot of rubber meets the road application of what Charlie just talked about and Leslie. I also want to share with you through those 3 questions 2 clients that our team works with in the trades, one in roofing and one in electrical, to help you understand how this has played out for them. So if you've tuned out, if you're driving, get re-engaged, because we're going to come back together here. Before I share my screen, I was going to share a couple of resources at the end. I don't think once I share, I can do that. So I'm just going to throw into the chat 3 different things that might be of value to you with a quick assessment that we offer to clients. You can do it fully on your own. We've got a playbook on how to exit your business. So if you're driving and you want to follow up on this sort of concept later, those could be some good resources in the chat for you. With that, I'm going to share my screen. And let's take a look here. Boom. All right. Super quick. What's my background? Why am I a relevant speaker on this topic? A couple of quick hits for you. One, I did grow up in the household of a tradesman in the little state of Rhode Island. My older brother is actually a custom home builder in Florida. So I do know what it's like to work in the trades. I've been a real estate investor. I've been on job sites for decades. Spent first part of my career in corporate finance, loaning money to businesses like yours. Businesses doing roughly 5 to 100 million in annual sales. I did that for the first 10 years of my career. About 10, 11 years ago, I became an entrepreneur. So I've literally been a COO and a CFO of a couple of different companies. I know what it's like to look employees in the eyes each day. I know what it's like to effectuate change in business. I've sold some of those businesses. I do some stuff in the HVAC space with selling companies. So, and then of course our team has got a background working with folks in the trades. I promised you 3 questions in 2 stories. And so let's dive in. Charlie talked a little bit about, if you remember, he had a slide that had 5 stairs on it, and the very bottom one was called the identify phase. And so what we believe is that there's 8 questions in that foundational layer to answer. We're not going to go through all 8 today, but I'm just going to give you a top level overview real quick. We break those questions down into 3 columns. 1, where are you at today? Where's your business at, more specifically? Column 2, where do you want to go personally? Right? This is a lot of where Leslie and I integrate together. And then lastly, if I know where I am, if I know where I want to go, well, then what does that allow me to do? It allows me to create a strategy to bridge the gap, right? So wildly important to know where you are and where you want to go. Otherwise, what we're going to do is show up in our businesses each day, do a lot of good things, but we're not going to be doing the things that are going to take us ultimately to where we really want to go. So the 3 questions I'm going to take you through today are in the left column. Are you attractive to buyers and ready to pass due diligence? What does best-in-class performance look like, and are you achieving it? What's your company worth, and how would you know? With that, let's dive in. Question 1, are you able to sell? There's really 2 concepts, and I think either Charlie or Leslie alluded to this, but there's some similarities, so a lot of dissimilarities, but some similarities to selling a company and buying and selling a home. I want you to think about attractiveness as curb appeal. Think about if you've ever bought a home. You say, you sort of set the search parameters. You say so many beds, so many baths, right? In a certain geographic radius with a certain price point, right? And then the listings start to come through from your realtor, and you click on them and you say, wow, that looks amazing. Or you pull up to the front of the house, it looks amazing, right? That's attractiveness. And there's a similar process when we go to sell a company. I won't bore you with the technical concepts, where we put together a little bit of information up front to intrigue people. The question is, would you attract buyers with that level of information? I'll walk you through a couple questions in a minute. The second one is, are you ready? Ready for what? Ready to pass due diligence. Similar to buying a home, you execute an agreement called a letter of intent. You say, hey, I'm willing to sell my company to you under a certain set of terms. Then we go through a process of due diligence where they get to kick the tires. They get to do that home inspection, right? They get to look at the financials. They get to look at a lot of the operations of the business, and they get to decide, do I still want to buy this company, or do I want to buy this company at the price that I originally agreed to? So ready to sell means you can pass that whole due diligence process and not get your purchase price retraded, right? So you say, Michael, what are a couple of quick thoughts here? I'll give you, we run our clients. Let me back up. How would you know if you're able to sell? First thing is, you can't answer that question yourself because you're too biased. I'm too biased to answer this question for my businesses that I run, right? You need a third party's perspective. How we do this is we have a 103 question proprietary assessment that we've created over the years, and it answers this. I'll give you a couple of the questions from it on attractive. So 3 questions. The tenure, experience, and results of our management team would impress a potential purchaser. That's 1 question. 2, our business is not dependent on our owner to operate. Nobody wants to buy a business that if you pull the owner out of it, it fails to run. 3rd question. Our gross margin and EBITDA percentage, some of you are starting to glaze over because I'm getting into finance terms. Our gross margin and our EBITDA percentage are best in class. Not just average, but top 25% for our industry. Those are 3 questions that we evaluate companies on under attractiveness. When we go to ready to sell, I'll give you 3 others as an example. Our business has an employee handbook that is aligned with our business and reviewed by our outside legal counsel. Very important. Buyer doesn't want to step into a can of worms on employment issues. 2nd question, we close our books. That's our financial reporting. We close our books and we produce monthly financial statements by the 15th of the following month. And if we got a leadership team, we share it with them. Are you doing that? 3rd question, under ready to sell. Our team has a defined schedule and a process for doing strategic and operational planning, including setting goals, developing plans, forecasting, and budgeting, right? So these are just examples of some of the questions that we ask. Here's the key question before we move on to the question 2 that I want you to self-reflect on in this moment. Have you had an outside party do this kind of assessment on your business? Yes or no? It's really pretty simple. You say, Michael, what would be the value of it? I've answered it in my mind, yes or no. The value of this is not just closing the deal when the time comes. The value of doing these assessments is that we're looking at your business through the eyes of a professional buyer and investor. And what we find out in this process is all sorts of opportunities to give you a better business today. A business that's easier to run, a business that's more profitable, a business that's ultimately more valuable. So as we think about going through a process like this, it's not just about being able to pass due diligence and sell your company in the future. It's actually about having a better business today. Question 2 that I told you we would walk through, and I'm going to share a couple stories now as we get into this one. What does best-in-class performance look like for your industry? First question, what's best in class? The 75th percentile. Let me break that down for the non-quants and statistics people in the room. That means you are the top 25% in your industry. So if you're in HVAC, top 25% HVAC. In roofing, top 25% roofing company. What does that look like? Lots of things we could talk about, but I want to distill it down to one metric. Profit as a percentage of your top line revenue. You say, Micah, business isn't just about profit. I agree with you. I actually think the only reason to be in business, even as a finance chief, is to impact the lives of people, right? Your employees, your customers, and your family. That's really what business is about. But finance is a great litmus test that reveals a lot of things to us because it's an outcome. And so here's the key question that's here. What does a top 25% company in your industry produce in profit percentage? You say, Micah, how would you know? I'll share with you how my team does it. 4 ways you see it on screen. First way that we figure that out, other than just our own experience of doing this for decades, is there are third-party vendors out there. I'll give you the name of 2 that track a lot of this. IBIS World would be one. The other is Profit Sense. And these are companies that all they do is they're collecting financial information on companies, aggregating it, and then they sell it, right? And they sell it to consultants like me and my team, and they can sell it to you as end users who are running companies. So that's one way. That's one source that we look at. Second source we look at. Industry and trade groups. I'll give you a great example on this. I have a client who's an electrical contractor that I'm going to speak about in the Pacific Northwest. Did you know that the National Association of Electrical Contractors, NECA, invites their membership to submit their financial statements every year? They anonymize them and they publish a report, and you can buy it for $100. And there's a lot of trade associations out there that do the same. And so that can be a second source of intelligence. A third source of intelligence can be publicly traded companies. So let's say you're a custom home builder. We could look at companies like Toll Brothers or Pulte, who are publicly traded. Are they the same as your company? Absolutely not. But they're a reference point. And the last data source would be, hey, who are the other owners and CEOs that you might know in your industry that maybe are in a different part of the country? You're not competing with them. And maybe you would have an open relationship to share information. I want to just share a quick story here. I know we've only got about 4 minutes or so left. But you say, Micah, what's the value of setting this vision of best-in-class performance? I'll tell you the value for my client who's in commercial industrial roofing. They did $16 million in sales last year. They're actually in this broad area that we're in of South Carolina, North Carolina. They did $16 million in sales last year. They pushed 12% to the bottom line on their tax returns. When we went through a process of getting to a clean number that you value companies off of, which is a whole nother conversation, they really were only profiting 10%. Do you know what best-in-class performance is for a commercial industrial roofing company? Because I do. It's 20%. So at 16 million in top line, that difference between the 10% they were actually profiting and best-in-class, that's costing them $1.6 million a year. 1.6 million in profit. You think my client's interested in closing that profit gap? Absolutely they are. I've got another client, electrical contractors, Pacific Northwest, did $7.4 million in top line revenue last year. They actually pushed 9.5% in profit to the bottom line. What does great profit performance look like? Very similar, at least 15, if not 20% in that industry. And so at 7.4 million, they are losing out by not being best in class. They're losing out at anywhere from $400,000 to almost $800,000 of profit a year. Now, if you're the owner of that company, you think that gets your attention? You think you're interested in figuring out, hey, why am I not generating that best in class performance? Of course you would be, because both of my clients are, and we're working together on closing that gap with them. And you may have a similar gap in your business, and that's why you want to know, what does best in class performance look like? Okay, I know, Leslie, I've got less than 3 minutes left. And so let's go to our last question now around valuation. What's your business worth? He said, Micah, how would I know this? Really 3 steps. Again, either you got to do this or you got to hire a consultant like me and my team to do this for you, because we value companies. We do all these things that I've just walked you through. One, you've got to understand how companies are valued. There's different approaches, but I'm just going to talk to the market approach where we look at deal comps. So there are, again, databases out there that track all the sold sales in a given industry. And so if you're a roofing client or electrical contractor, or you do concrete installation, or you do the concrete walls, we can actually pull sold deal comps of companies in your industry that have sold. What multiple of the bottom line profit are they selling at, right? And so we set a range of value, because all these companies obviously trade on a range. There's no one value. Then you got to actually say, okay, companies are selling at 3 to 9 times annual earnings. Well, where am I at on that? You say, well, how do you do that? You do that by assessing your operational performance and your financial performance. There's always a correlation between what you're doing day to day operationally and financial outcomes. There's always a correlation between operational and financial performance and what your business is worth, right? So again, my client, I'll end with this and we'll move to a wrap up real quick. Those same 2 clients, roofing, electrical contractor. The electrical contractor is currently worth $2.5 million. They've got a $7 million business. They're worth 2.5. I won't tell you all of the math of how I got there, but they're missing out on some value, right? They've got a difference between the value that they would trade at as a best-in-class company versus where they're at today. You say, what's the difference, Micah? They could be worth, and again, to be clear, without growing top-line revenue, they could be worth double, over $5 million. And some of that is closing the profit gap, and some of that is transforming the way that the business is run. My client, who's a roofing company, had great performance in 24, okay performance in 23. They've had a little bit of up and down. They're probably worth 5 to 7 million. They could be worth 15 million with some work, right? So, you know, the takeaway that I want you to have, you know, from some of this is, have you worked with someone to define the value of your company? That's not you. Have you gone through this process to define what best-in-class performance looks like, right? Have you worked with an outside party to actually know if your business is attractive and ready to sell? If not, amazing opportunities exist in front of you, and they're not just for the future. They're for you to build a better business today. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Leslie.
So some of this information hopefully made you a little bit uncomfortable, made you go, ooh, I don't know if I know all of this. I don't know if my business has all of these tools and resources. I don't know if I have a team. I don't know what would happen to my family or my business if something happened to me today. Fortunately, I'm a former school teacher, and I am very comfortable making other people uncomfortable. It is my gift. But we really need not only the home build, I mean, I'm particularly, I need the Home Builders Association to kind of come into this and begin recognizing what happens if the individual businesses within the Home Builders Association really start increasing their profitability, increasing what they can do with their clients, what they can do for their employees, what they can do for their families, what they can do for their supply chains, and really kick it up a notch. And I also want you all to begin recognizing what happens if you don't. And what happens if all of the Home Builders Association and the various supply chain attached to them walks away from millions of dollars of profit now and profit at the time of selling those businesses? Because that's what we are looking at, Charlie and Micah and myself. We've seen the statistics. Only 3% of businesses really get the full value of the business out at the time of sale. That is a horrible failure rate. And so we are very passionate about having these conversations with business owners and helping them make some uncomfortable choices. They're going against the grain. Most business owners aren't honestly thinking about it. That's why most business owners aren't walking away with the nest egg they deserve. That's the problem. So we got a few minutes. What questions can we answer from you all now? Richard, I see you talking, but I don't hear you talking.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I do have questions, but I would say this, and one of the reasons why I'm on the Zoom calls is for an exit strategy, but I have multiple very good poured wall contractors across the country that just liquidate. I'm talking some of them 50, 60 million a year, big, huge companies.
Yep.
And I call them and I say, why would you do that? They're like, yeah, it's just, well, Rich, in the concrete world, you know, you go to try to sell and basically everybody just like, well, I'll just work cheaper and you can take your customers. I don't need to buy your business. That type of thing. And that's actually why we got into manufacturing walls. That changes everything for us. But we have a good poured wall business and I have no idea how to sell it. So the precast business, I think, will be sought after. I don't know how to go about that.
I've got a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Just in the last couple of minutes, is without us going too far down the rabbit hole with you, I think you have a conversation that could be had with Micah of how do people do this? Because while some may be walking away and liquidating, I'll bet you dollars to donuts. Not everybody is.
No, not everybody. I just have close friends that they're 10 years older than me.
Yep.
Run great businesses and they just sell off their equipment and close the doors.
Sounds like a huge missed opportunity.
It does to me. I just look at them and go, why would you do that? But
Richard, quick response in 20 seconds or less. Why does anybody buy a services business? Because pouring concrete is a services business, right?
Right, it is.
The services business. I think a lot of it, obviously the whole reason we buy a company is predictability, low risk, and the likelihood that cash flows are going to continue. And I would propose that customer acquisition is a huge piece.
Yep.
If we pull you out of this, are you still going to be able to acquire customers? The second piece is, do we have standardized systems and methodologies to render services to clients? So I'm very familiar with that. Love to chat with you after today and love to help not only you, but some of these other folks, extract the value, because there is definitely value in.
Oh man. Yeah, there is. So, but yeah, I'm interested in working on something. I have 10 more years, but I'm thinking about it now.
And just to chime in, the ideal time frame is if you get 5 years or more between you and an exit, you've got a lot of opportunities, but there's always opportunities at different time horizons.
Right. Yeah. Great.
And
I really appreciate you guys.
Having somebody that can come in and look at the different
Charlie,
parts of your business. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is having somebody that can come in and look at the different piece parts. You look at your business probably in silos of how the business is set up, right? Having somebody like Micah that can come in and look at it, and maybe there's another way to organize it that does put you in a position that this business can be sold this way, this one's leverageable to maybe acquire some of those that are just trying to get out of the business where you're changing your geography. That's all part of this conversation. But having somebody that can see it, kind of the forest through the trees, I think is a big part of what these two other folks on the call do for a living.
I appreciate you guys.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is when Charlie did, like, if you recall the graphic of the steps, and at the
Mhm.
end it was manage, and Charlie said, and then you manage it as you go forward. What is it? It is no longer the business anymore. It is the juice, the harvest, the dollars coming out of that business, that now you need a strategy to make sure that that lasts through the rest of the time that you need it to last for, so that ideally you don't run out of money or die with too much. And that is a whole other skill set that you need a financial person walking you with. When I first started this, I honestly didn't understand how tricky managing finances were. And I kind of felt guilty. I felt like, hey, am I charging money for something that people can do for themselves? Kind of like, I don't know, I can brush my teeth myself and I can floss myself. Do I really need a dentist? And then I began realizing, yeah, you do need a dentist, because you need that money that you extract from that business. You need it to really pass a series of hurdles. And for so often as a business owner, you don't want to invest outside of your business, and you kind of hate Wall Street. Why would I put my money there when I can put it back into my business and multiply it much more rapidly and in my control and in more tax efficiently? But eventually you're going to get to a place where you need to have that fund managed excellently with skill. And when you have somebody who you've really developed trust with over time, and you don't feel like it's scamming you, just going to walk with you and your family through the good times and the bads, it's a game changer. It's a game changer. So we are excited to engage in any conversations that any folks here want us to have. And honestly, Megan and Jude, I would love to see how we can keep engaging in these conversations, because I honestly believe that the business owner community, they may have some anxious panic of this, but they're not fully adequately informed and aware of the steps that they can take and the control that they have to really change the game for their businesses.
Yeah. Well, it's been informational for me.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Jude, we pass it to you.
Well, thanks y'all for being here. This class is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube probably today or tomorrow for y'all to review later as well.
Love it.
Great.